You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. Today, Roisin, we have a very, very special guest.
We do indeed, Paul. And if our viewers remember, you and I recently went down to the JFK Arboretum down in Wexford, just down the road from us here in Kilkenny. And we mentioned our guest for this show, Rachel Rightside Blonde, who is a proud American, a writer, a poet, and the creator of the George Collection YouTube channel. Rachel created in January in 2022, in the very same year by chance that we created the Irish Political Roundup. Rachel was born and raised in the great state of Iowa, in the Midwestern U.S. state that sits between Missouri and Mississippi rivers. Rachel says she found the original copy of the George magazine cleaning out a basement, which then gave her the interest in politics. I first came across Rachel Rightside Blonde's YouTube channel in the early 2022, and I remember watching the news where it showcased the original George magazine newsreel in September 1995. And my mother and her friends, where I grew up in Derry, and like the majority of the Irish people, all talk about and remember exactly where they were and when they heard the news of the assassination of President JFK. My generation remember where we were and when we heard and how we heard the deaths of Princess Diana and JFK Jr., his beautiful wife Carolyn Bassett Kennedy, and her sister Lauren Bassett. I hope I'm pronouncing the names right. We here in Ireland claim President Kennedy as a son of Ireland, along with his family. Rachel Rightside Blonde also worked at the New George magazine for a while, where she interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr. Rachel left George magazine to focus on the original magazine content YouTube channel, and she's here with us tonight for our video. Rachel, you are very, very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure just chatting with you guys backstage and getting to know you. And it's just crazy. We were all in this together across the world. It feels like we're next door neighbors here, but we're really
Mm.
literally across the world from each other, and we're all in this fight together. And I just really appreciate you having me on your show.
Well, Rachel, as I said, I'm wearing one of your merchandise from your website, but of George hoodies. We call them hoodies in here in Ireland. You call them sweatshirts. Do you in?
Sweatshirts, hoodies, you can call it whatever. We're not, picky on that, but I love that color. That color looks great on you.
Thank you. It's one of yours. So if anybody would like a hoodie like this with George magazine put on it, you go to www.rachelrightside.com.
Yes, I have some of my merchandise has it's just kind of obscure. If you watch my shows, a lot of the stuff that I put on my in my store will make sense. If you're not really awake and you don't really pay attention to more of the obscure type of politics, it probably won't make a whole lot of sense. So your viewers will probably like it and enjoy it because they probably know a few things, I'm guessing.
Well, Paul, we went down to the JFK Arboretum recently.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Ireland has a massive connection between uh, JFK and America, going back many, many years. And the original George magazine was founded by JFK Jr. Rachel, how did you get interested in the George magazine, and how did it kind of spark your interest in politics?
Well, I saw my friend now, Vincent Fusca, he was wearing George t-shirts, and it kind of sparked my interest. And then, like Roisin said, I was in a basement cleaning out this basement of a man with dementia. His adult children didn't want to fly back to the Midwest to clean out his basement, so it was just a basement full of stuff. And I got volunteered to help with this. I wasn't very happy about it. I was very not happy about it. So I spent that week in his basement going through all of his prized possessions, which was it was a good life lesson for me that a lot of the things we think are going to matter and that our kids will want, they probably will not, and they don't care. And these people, you know, they just didn't, we did ship them the stuff that we thought would be important. But I mean, again, it was like subjective. It was up to me to decide, well, would his kids want this? Well, yes, I think they would. Would they want this? No. Well, one of the things that was there was just a bunch of magazines, and one of them was the Original George Magazine, which I have here next to me. This right here.
Wow.
Yes. And as you mentioned, you know, George Magazine started in November of 1995 by JFK Jr. and his business partner, Michael Berman. And it was a political magazine that is kind of an interesting concept, especially nowadays. We wouldn't dream of having a magazine like George, which features stuff from the left, stuff from the right, stuff from everywhere. And it's just a hodgepodge, if you will, of information across the board. So it could be about policies, it could be about politicians, it could be about mafia stories. I mean, there was one story about this surgeon who would like surgically change people's faces so they couldn't be detected by authorities. I mean, just stuff like that. They talk about spy things and CIA plots and just all kinds of crazy stuff that is super interesting, especially looking back at now. And so when I found this magazine, I thought, well, you know, it wasn't worth a whole lot on eBay. I mean, you can get it for like 20 bucks. I think you could still probably find it for under $100 even today if you really wanted it. So it wasn't really worth a ton of money. The one that was worth a lot of money is the Survival Guide to the Future, which I don't know if you guys know about that, but it's got the Survival Guide to the Future. It says Platform 2020 inside of it, and it talks about the lung attacking virus. It talks about Indictment Day. Will Hillary get busted? That's on the cover of that as well. So that one those are pricey. And I don't even want to say how much I spent on those because it's kind of embarrassing. But those are still pricey. Those are probably, I think I saw one just today actually for under 500, which is very rare. I actually put an offer on it because I thought I might as well. But the other ones are, you know, over $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, you name it. I mean, especially if it's in really good condition, they can get pretty pricey. I have 2 copies of that. One's just kind of, the color's kind of off, and then I have one really good copy that I'm trying to keep, you know, safe. So when I do my shows, I use the kind of crappier copy and then just save the good one for other things. But the reason I started this show is because I was interested to see what else are in these. You know, if he had the lung attacking virus magazine, then surely there's other information in these that people should look into. So I started with the first one. I asked Vincent, who I had met randomly. All these things just happened very randomly. I just went to an event. I met Vincent, didn't know he was going to be at this event even, met him, and then we became friends and started talking about these George magazines. And I said, which one should I get? What's your favorite one? And he goes, well, I would get them all. They're all good. So I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll just start. So for Christmas and for different birthdays and stuff, I would ask for certain issues that I needed. And I think it took me probably about a year and a half, and then I finally got all of the issues. But in the meantime, I started this YouTube channel December 7th of 2021, and it's the day of infamy, Pearl Harbor. I didn't realize that. It just happened to be on that day, so it's kind of random that that's the day I started my channel. But the first George collection show started in January of 2022. And then I made a goal because it's just a hobby. It's not like I was making money doing this or anything. It was just something that I had passion doing. And I tried to do one show a week and just look for things that would be of interest, looking at it from kind of a, you know, the obscure point of view, not just what you see is what you get, but more of a deeper view. And I found so many amazing things. And so I'm on episode, I think 128, or I think this week will be 128. No, this week will be 129. Sorry. This week will be 129. And each week there's something, you know, some things are really cool. Like when I found out that there's 57 total issues of these old magazines and 57 in gematria. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Some people have been using that to communicate in certain ways. Some people can go too far with it, but there's definitely communications taking place. But there's 57 issues. 57 is George in gematria. It's Tesla. It's Moon. So it makes me wonder if there was some kind of technology used in these magazines, like the looking glass type stuff, where they could see what's coming, and then they put it in the magazine, and then the future proves what they said in the past. So that would make sense to me. So out of 57 total issues, the 47th cover of George has Donald Trump's face on it. That's crazy to me. When I found that out, I was like, what? That's insane. That's literally insane. And then you've got, just on the first cover alone, you've got the words, George, John Kennedy, President, dodging bullets, FBI. And then you have revolution. And that's all on just this first cover. I mean, there's crazy stuff in this. There's an ad in this one for the New World Order. It's a car, but it talks about the New World Order. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. There's stuff all the time. And then when you look at the timing of the magazines too. So JFK Jr.'s plane went down in 1999. Okay, and there's a lot of speculation about Hillary Clinton running for Senate, and he was going to run for Senate, and all of this speculation. And that year, I believe it was April of 1999, there was a magazine that says on the cover, "Why Hillary won't be senator." So just picture this. You're John Kennedy. The rumor is that you're going to be running for Senate. Your main opponent will be Hillary Clinton. You have a magazine, a political magazine, and you put on the cover of that magazine, "Why Hillary won't be senator." And, the article it's not like a mean article when you read it, but the headline, it's like clickbait. It makes you want to read the article. But looking at it now, it's like, wow, that's pretty interesting timing. And then you have, later on that year, you have another magazine that's called the Political Humor magazine. It's got Ben Stiller on the cover, who's been in the news a lot lately, endorsing Kamala, but he's sharpening a pencil in a Bill Clinton pencil sharpener. So I thought that was interesting too, because if the rumors are true that JFK Jr. is still around, his plane did go down, but it was all fake because he was going behind the scenes to do what he needed to do. That seems like a calm to me, like, okay, I'm sharpening up and I'm going to use you to do it. So that's pretty interesting. And could it be a coincidence? Of course. All of these things could be coincidences. And that's what we have to remember, is that some of it could be coincidences, but there's so many of them that it just seems like, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of coincidences. Something definitely is going on. And then later that year in November, there's a magazine. It's got Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover, and it says, "Hillary comes clean." So these are all titles in the year 1999 that have to do with Hillary or the Clintons, or it's almost like they're telling a story. So those were really interesting as well. There was another one I was going to talk about. Now I just had it in my head and then I forgot what I was going to do. There's so many. I mean, you really just have to go back and you have to read through some of the articles. For instance, in the Survival Guide to the Future, not many people saw this or noticed this, but John Kennedy interviewed Bill Gates in that magazine. And he's talking about the future of the internet and privacy, and how the government could basically become Big Brother and watch us using the internet. And Bill Gates was obviously pointing to the convenience of the internet. Well, if you want to order food, you can just order it from the internet and they'll bring you your food. Or if you want to go shopping, I mean, all the things that we see now are conveniences and make it hard for us not to use it. But he was talking about, well, what happens when the government oversteps its bounds in terms of privacy? And Bill Gates says something akin to, the Americans are the ultimate "we believe in privacy" country. Like, that's what we believe in. But after a period of terrorism or heavy terrorism, they are more likely to give up a lot of those freedoms. So he essentially, this was in 1997. So this was 4 years before 9/11. But he was essentially describing the Patriot Act, which allowed the government to take a lot of our privacy, a lot of our freedoms away. In that same article, he talks about how he says, "I fund population control." And this is back when Microsoft, a lot of people don't know this, but MSNBC, people don't know why it's MSNBC. MS stands for Microsoft and NBC. So Microsoft and NBC, what could go wrong there when Microsoft and NBC, a news channel, and Bill Gates get together to create a news a news station. I mean, that's crazy. So I didn't know that. I've learned so much in these magazines, politically speaking. I didn't know about the MSNBC. I didn't know. It's just insane the amount of information in these magazines.
I remember commenting once on your video saying it's like JFK, and this sounds really far-fetched, but it's like JFK Jr. It's like he could see into the future. It's like it's as if he went through a time machine and came back and wrote about what's happening, because everything in the George magazines is so relevant here in 2024. It's like
It really is.
isn't it?
Yep.
It's like it's happening now.
It really is. My last video was about Diddy because there was an issue about Diddy, and it was talking about the deaths of it's talking about the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, and in it says one of their parents, I think it was Tupac's mom, said, "Does Diddy know something about the death of my son?" So, but even back then, Diddy was doing these nefarious actions, and people were looking at him side-eyed. And then in doing the research for that show, I was listening to old interviews between, with Tupac and Biggie, and I was listening. There's a video of Tupac auditioning almost for the role of Tupac. I mean, if you were to see it, he's just a normal 17-year-old, and he's like, "So my name's Tupac Shakur." And he almost seems gay. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. He doesn't seem like this rough and tough rapper that we see in these music videos. It
Yeah.
seems like he's an actor. So it makes you wonder, did they just create this persona of Tupac? Then in the same breath, I have an interview with Biggie talking about how he said, Tupac and him had this little war they were going back in the 90s. It was like East Coast versus West Coast and whatever. It's just crazy. And he said, I didn't realize that because of our music and our beef with each other, that we were actually separating the West Coast from the East Coast. Like it was literally West Coast from East Coast. And that struck me because we know now that they try to divide us in any way that they can, whether it's black versus white, different religions, women versus men, gay versus straight. It doesn't matter what it is. They're just trying to divide us. And so they were literally making these rappers and promoting them to the point where they got to these massive fame levels, and then they use them to divide us. I think that's the whole point of that, was just to, I mean, that's not the whole point, but there were other points to this rapping thing, for the Black culture in general. Just, it wasn't healthy, I don't think. So you look at it like that, that's something I never would have learned. I never would have thought of it like that. Like, wow, they're using rap to separate our country, to divide us even further. They can use anything they want. And that was my most recent show. But there's been other ones too where, one of them I was talking about Ben Stiller, because Ben Stiller came out. We had Robert De Niro coming out and throwing a fit in the streets of New York, calling everybody gangsters. And it's like, nobody listens to Hollywood anymore. At least the people who are here, like, awake. We don't care what the Hollywood stars have to say anymore, or the musicians. Eminem just recently came out and, talked highly of Obama and promoted Kamala. And I can tell you this, a lot of people in Detroit that grew up listening to Eminem. I grew up listening to Eminem. That's right in my wheelhouse. People don't respect him anymore because he used to be a rapper that would fight against the status quo, and now he's holding hands with them. And people can see that he's a sellout. So all of these things are playing out, and people are starting to see the truth. And I believe George Magazine, not only was it a good magazine, it was a good concept in the 90s, but it could be a great protocol, or, I don't know, base of what we should do with the media in the future, in terms of just putting the truth out, putting different things out. Because where right now would a liberal watch the news and hear anything anti-liberal, and vice versa? Where would a conservative watch the news and hear anything that's like anti-conservative? Because it's so separate. So what we're doing is we're living in these echo chambers of what we want to hear. Even the algorithms on social media. I get on my TikTok and I see what I want to see. I don't see lefty stuff. I get on Twitter sometimes and I'll see stuff that I'm like, ugh, this is annoying. But I also follow a lot of left-leaning politicians, so I can see what they're saying and, just know what's going on the other side. But how many people on the left are doing that? On the right, they're following Donald Trump and all these right-wing politicians to see what they think. And maybe, just maybe, something they say would strike a chord and make sense. And it would make you think, and it would make you question what you believe or what you thought you believed. But we just don't have that anymore. And it's very dangerous. And I think it's all by design. They're just trying to keep us separate. So not only am I passionate about the magazines because of what JFK Jr. was able to do in them, but in the future, we could look to these as a guide in terms of what we need to do with the new media. And it will be coming, because we can't have this consolidated monopoly of information that we have right now. It's just not healthy at all. So I think great things are coming, and I would love to be involved somehow. I don't know how yet. I think God will take me where what I'm supposed to be doing, but yeah, it's just something that needs to change. And I know you guys agree with me. You've done a lot of
I
stuff
do,
over there
definitely.
too. So yeah, I just love it. And I love talking about it, clearly, because I've been talking the last 5 minutes. So you guys talk.
We're listening intently because something, Paul, I'll jump in first. You
Yeah.
mentioned George is number 57. Well,
Mhm.
I'm 57 years of age and I'm wearing a George magazine.
Wow, that's awesome.
Isn't it?
Love it. Now, if your birthday was like May 7th, that would be really freaky.
No, it's April 29th.
Okay,
A little
well,
short, a week short.
A week short. And
shoot.
another thing was, there was, now I forget that, that's gone from me, and but I think that's really interesting to the
Mm,
news. When you think about how, and I said this on radio, when I had my women's program on radio,
mm.
there are an awful lot of people now that are in the media the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years. They're very much manufactured and then managed to be influencers and be celebrities with a voice to endorse this and to actually pass on the message from whoever's paying them to pass on a particular message. And
Yeah.
I've said to you, Paul, haven't I? The days of
Yeah,
influencers and celebrities have gone.
yeah, exactly. Because isn't there a course in third level college or university, and there was called on influence, and that was called content creation. So that word influencer is starting to become a bit of a dirty word.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And Rachel, from what I've seen
You're
from
frozen,
looking at
Paul? Yeah.
your videos, which are excellent by the way, and I'd highly recommend anyone to watch your YouTube channel. It's fantastic. It is great that there was a magazine that had all um different types of opinions in it, even like some of the stuff that it covered throughout the year. There's one e- episode where you go 250 things to make America better. So it's kind of similar to Make America Great Again. There's some really, really interesting suggestions. And one of the top suggestions was that everybody of a certain age should do some public service. And why would that be a good thing? According, according to your video, is because as you said, you had like East Coast, West Coast people being divided would bring people together and stuff like that. So even that magazine came out 25 years ago, there's still a lot of stuff in it that's still very relevant to 2024.
Yes. I've read, I think I did a show on the first maybe 10 of those, the
Yeah,
250 ways to make it better. And yeah, I think the first one was about how everyone should have to go into this. Either you serve publicly, you go into the military for 1 year. Because can you imagine? Can you imagine the love of country if everybody went and saw? And I mean, you've got people from all across the country working alongside each other. My grandfather was in the Korean War, and this was back, whenever the Korean War was. I don't know the exact dates, but it was, before 1955, because that was when my mom was born. But my mom said that my grandpa said back then that when you are at war, it doesn't matter what color the person is next to you. That's your call. That's your soldier. That's your buddy. That's you're
yeah,
working together. And I think that that's good that people learn that at a young age. Even before like the civil rights of the 60s was a thing in the United States, my grandfather already knew that, and there was no racism that doesn't exist when you're in the military like that.
No.
So
absolutely.
to bring that concept back to young people, and I don't think I think that racism is overblown in our country too, because everything's racist, but really, I think we're one of the least racist countries compared to what I've heard from other countries. Now, have I been to those places? No, this is just from me, what I've heard from other places, what it's like when with different races and colors and whatnot in other countries. But I think that that's another hot button that people have used, the government, the powers that be have used to divide us, this concept of race. So yes, I think getting back to the public service for 1 year, whatever that looks like, would be amazing. And it would just, this generation is interesting. This new generation, these new generations that are coming up that have grown up in this woke culture. It's going to be really interesting to see, because some of them don't have any ambition. I hate to say it. I'm not generalizing. I'm saying that some of them do. Some are very ambitious, but I would say that just the level of like grit and going after it and that kind of thing is very, it's not like it used to be. So I think that that would definitely help. And also there was another book too. So there were two books by George. One was called the George 250 Ways to Make America Better. The other one was the George Political Book of Lists. And JFK Jr. loved lists. That was just something, that was a quirk of his, that he liked lists. One of the lists in that book was the Clinton body count.
That's right.
And it went through all these different people, like Vincent Foster, who I did a show about. Yeah, and it talked about the Clinton body count in his book. And then supposedly, you know, rumor has it that he was part of that. But the connections in these are just insane. And even if it's not a connection from the obscure, it's just weird that things are still playing out to the degree that they are.
Yeah.
In today.
And JFK Jr., he also interviewed even Castro. I mean, he even flew down and met Castro. Is it Castro? Yeah, Castro. And then he interviewed George Nixon, and then Jared. And then he even asked, who do you think killed my father? And I think, wow, all those interviews that he did really have
Yes.
a key message for what is so relevant today.
So he put Richard Nixon on the cover of his first anniversary issue. And prior to me reading George, I thought Richard Nixon was a bad president because of a Watergate, the whole scandal and all of that. Well, then you realize that Nixon was the most popular president. He had the most votes of any president, you know, prior to that or since. And I mean, I think Donald Trump's going to give him a run for his money. But so Richard Nixon, they got rid of his vice president, Spiro Agnew, because of some tax something or other. So they got rid of him. He stepped down, and then Gerald Ford gets put in. And I don't think that would have been Nixon's first choice, but that's who got put in there. Well, Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission, and the Warren Commission is, of course, the group that said that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in killing JFK. And this Gerald Ford ends up being vice president. And then, of course, they get rid of Nixon. They have this weird Watergate scandal thing. And then Gerald Ford gets put in with no votes at all. He just gets promoted right to vice president and then right to president. So I thought it was interesting that he put Nixon on the cover. And I think it's because JFK Jr. knew about that whole thing. He knew that Nixon was probably not a bad president, but the deep state got rid of him because Tucker Carlson said this actually. They said Nixon knew who shot John, meaning John Kennedy. So they had to get rid of him. They couldn't have him as president because he knew too much. So then they replaced him with someone who's on the Warren Commission, who's a happy little puppet that just will do whatever he says. So that's what happened. Things like that are not by happenstance. He did that on purpose for us to look into it. And that was a big one for me to learn. When Tucker did that news story, I was like, now it makes sense why he did that. He wanted us to know that. But he interviewed George Wallace, who was a segregationalist who was against John Kennedy. He didn't want blacks and whites to go to the same school. So John Kennedy had to send National Guard down just so that these black students could go to school. So he interviewed him. He interviewed Fidel Castro. And that never did actually get put in the magazine because Fidel Castro, it was a weird, he went down there and Fidel Castro kept oh yeah, we'll do the interview in a couple of days. So John went down there not knowing any of the plans, not having like, okay, we're going to interview on this day. He just totally strong-armed John essentially. And then when he finally did get an interview, the very last day, he's like, no cameras and you can't publish this. So that's the whole point of me coming down here, was to interview you, and now I can't use any of it. So he did interview Fidel Castro, and him and Fidel had a moment when they left, when he was walking out. And Fidel said that, I think he said that Lee Harvey Oswald was trying to get to Cuba and they wouldn't let him in. I got to go back and like actually look. So, or there's a show that talks about this. And he said something like, if that would have happened, then maybe maybe JFK would still be alive, something like that. So they did have a moment where they discussed kind of stuff like that. Then he interviewed Gerald Ford, who I just told you about. And Gerald Ford told John to his face that he believes that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And that was that. So that was really, I mean, when I read that interview, I'm like, I bet the tension in that room was through the roof, just through the roof, because John obviously knew things, or he at least speculated things. He never would publicly talk about it because he would say, at the end of the day, none of this is going to bring my father back. So it doesn't matter who killed him, what the circumstances were, it's not going to bring him back. But I think maybe later on in his life, he did get curious and he did question some things. There's no doubt that Robert Kennedy Jr., who lost his father after John, questions the narrative. He was talking about Sirhan, who supposedly shot Robert Kennedy, and he said that there were like 6 bullets in the guy's gun and none of them hit his father. Like all of the bullets could be accounted for and none of them were his father. And the bullet wounds were on his back and they were close. So it was the person behind him that killed him. Allegedly. So there's just so much that needs to come out. And I think John Kennedy was trying to do that with George Magazine, with all of these incredibly interesting articles. And I think when Trump gets back in office, he said the first thing he wants to do, or one of the first thing he wants to do, is to release the JFK files so that people finally realize what happened. I saw him recently on an interview where he said, if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't want to release it either. Which makes, and someone said, well, is it because there's people that were involved with it back then that are still around today? And he said, yeah, kind of like, so the people that are, there might have been 1 or 2 people back then who were involved that maybe didn't want to be. Maybe they were just innocent bystanders that saw something. I don't know, I'm totally speculating, but that he didn't want to compromise or put them in danger in any way. So who knows what the reason was, but I think soon we'll know the truth about what happened. And then we can start the process of atonement in this country, because we've been under this umbrella of corruption for so long. And so many Americans have no idea that we're even slaves to the system. You know, they keep you just happy enough to not even recognize that you're in this cage. So I just can't wait for what's to come. I pray all the time that Trump wins and he can start peeling back these layers of corruption that we've been living in for decades.
Paul, Rachel, what would be your favorite? And this is like asking me which would be my favorite between the 2 cats here, but they're probably, apart from your 2 children, very sentimental to you. But which, if you were to pick out, say, 3 favorite of them, George magazines, which ones would they be?
I like the first one. That's probably my favorite one, just because it's the most iconic. People see it and they know exactly what it is. And it's such a thick, high quality magazine. The articles inside of it, and the first one especially, are really awesome. So definitely that one. I like the Survival Guide to the Future because obvious reasons. That's a pretty important one. But I think one that people maybe don't know about, like the one that I talked about earlier that says why Hillary won't be senator. I think that's an important one because it has Garth Brooks on the cover, and he's, Garth Brooks, of course, sang at the Biden inauguration, and there's been some questionable things that have come out about him. So I think there's more to that, but I feel like that magazine has more to it than we recognize. But beyond that, I mean, I like them all really, but I really also enjoy so the first anniversary was Nixon. The second and third anniversaries were like CIA type spy issues. And there was a lot of great information in those issues in particular. The anniversary issues talk about so much stuff. There's so many cool things, but for him to bring up the CIA, one of the things said like 50 memories of the CIA, secrets and lies. I mean, that's pretty interesting, knowing the connection between the CIA and Kennedy, and for him to put that in the magazine too. Probably, I'm sure people were watching it. Now imagine you're the deep state and John Kennedy Jr. starts a magazine. You don't think they're going to watch that like a hawk? They were watching that thing. They probably all had subscriptions. Probably all read the whole thing the first day they got it.
Absolutely. And Rachel, of course, with the Kennedy, John F. Kennedy Jr. and his father JFK, big Irish connection. In Through the course of reading and collecting the George magazines, is there many articles about Ireland um that you found?
Not directly. There might be mentions that that have been mentioned in the past. Um, I know there's an article about different aspects. I think there was one about like India, something in India, the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa. There was something written about her. So there's different aspects of like
Hmm.
European politicians or public figures or that kind of thing, and then how they play into American politics. But as far as any that are like specifically about Ireland, I don't recall any specific about that. But that doesn't mean that it's not there, because I haven't read every single article in every single magazine. I kind of skim them and I'm like, ooh, this looks interesting. I'll read this. And then, yeah, that's how it kind of goes.
You might find it in another magazine that you read in
Well,
a few weeks' time. Anything's possible.
right. The way that it usually works is you talk about something and the next day it pops up. So that's probably what's going to happen.
Rachel, Tiffany blue, and I didn't realize that I actually have a Tiffany blue box, a pair of sunglasses that my daughter gave me because I never wear sunglasses. So we're off
Yeah.
on holidays, and she said, "Here, this a pair of sunglasses," and it's actually Tiffany blue and
I
Tiffany
love that.
blue. And so, tell us about Tiffany blue, and you also wrote a poem about Tiffany blue.
I did. It actually, I did a show with somebody. I believe it might have even been one. But I was just reflecting on the Tiffany blue, the box that Melania was carrying on Inauguration Day that she handed to the Obamas, the Tiffany blue box that they put the bodies of, John Kennedy and Carolyn and Lauren. I was just reflecting on that. And I was thinking, it's not just a color, it's so much more. It's symbolic of taking what was taken from us and getting it back, getting the innocence of our country back. So it was literally just about um the dark to light, basically, getting the innocence back. That's why it ends with a baby smiling, because there's nothing more innocent than a baby smiling.
No.
So yeah, I just remember coming into my office right here, and I'm like, it just started pouring out of me. I'm like, I feel this poem coming on. I got to write it down. I had the whole thing written in like 20 minutes. It was just boom.
Wow.
It was a limerick as a shout out to the Irish poem, which is a limerick. Am I saying that right? Limerick, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Which was a throwback to his roots, right? So there you go. There's your Ireland
There you
tie-in
go.
right there for that poem. And most of the time limericks are like funny. They're like da 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 da. They kind of make you laugh.
Hmm.
It's a serious one. So I took what was usually like jovial and I made it. We're gonna get our innocence back. So I'm glad people really liked it. I spent a lot of time on the video because I wanted it to be perfect, and I put little things in there that at certain times, just to kind of send a message to drive it home. So I really enjoyed making it, and people really loved it. And I hope and pray that we see that come to fruition very soon. We're taking that in the video, I don't know if you've seen it, Paul, I know Roisin has probably, but, and just it shows families together, it shows fathers with kids and mothers and children playing together of all different cultures, and there's no division. So, and I just think a lot of people want to see that, happen. So it
I
gives them
remember
hope.
growing up in Africa and Saudi, we all were international, everybody was all international from all different cultures, and we didn't all speak the same language. We all came from different languages, none of us spoke, but we could communicate and we had fun and we laughed. And there's nothing, you talk about nothing as beautiful as a baby smile. There's nothing as beautiful to hear the sound of children laughing and
I
giggling,
agree.
you
Yep.
know? And I think too, what I'm really can't wait for is family values to come back within society and good community values.
Yep. I think our families have been ripped to shreds. They just, everything that could distract us, they've used against us, whether it's, I was an athlete. I was a Division I college basketball player. I love sports. And I'll be the first one to say that youth sports has gotten out of hand. It's crazy how insane it is. It's like your kid goes to school, you don't see them all day, and then they have practice for 3 hours at night, and then you basically see them for 10 minutes, and then it's bedtime.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends, you've got the mom going with one kid to this, and then you've got the dad with going with the other kid to this. So the families never seem to have time to connect, and that's so important. And I'm not saying it's just sports, it's lots of different things. But I just feel like we need to put the focus more on healthy families, because that solves so many mental health issues when people get older. Just the distractions from the phones to the entertainment industry to work. I mean, there's just so much stuff. So we have to really do, as parents, especially, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to raise our kids right, give them the time they deserve, show them the love they need. I mean, Mother Teresa, she's a questionable, we know like more about her, but she said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment, because if everybody would love their families, we wouldn't have so many issues. We'd still have issues, but maybe not so many.
Yeah. And two, Paul and I, we've interviewed as well with, and I think the Olympics really brought that out. And Paul and I, we've both done programs on the keep men and boys out of women's sports. And I think the Olympics really exposed all that. And we're having big issues with that over here in Ireland as well. And everyone knows my opinions on that. It's like, you can't change gender. You can't change sex, and there's no such thing as gender. And no boys, no men should be playing in women's sports, in women's spaces or places. Um, and then, when you come back to the magazine as well, do you know what of the video? And I've always said this to you, I love the content, but my favorite part is the intro and the outro. The clock, and I love the clock. And there's a clock outside, the same clock, similar clock, outside Trump Towers and down outside Trump Hotel here in Clare in Dunbeg.
Yeah, I was very careful about that too, and that's been going back a long time. That was even the first show I had elements of that. Juan actually told me about the eternal flame outside of John Kennedy's, how it's a symbol, it's a bad symbol. So I took that out when I found that out, because we're all learning. We can't know everything, but as long as we recognize, okay, wow, I don't want to promote that. So I put something else in instead. I actually did like a pan from JFK speaking to John Kennedy, almost like that he was passing the torch on to John to take over for him. But I love in the outro, how John says, we were taking a cue from you and folks like yourself. And it's just so brilliant, because now looking back, you're like, why would he say that? Why would he say cue? And he's also doing the little hand symbol. They do this little hand symbol often, and Trump does it too. And I've seen Princess Diana in pictures doing it. So I've seen lots of figures that are in this movement that do that. And I feel like there's something obviously to that, where they wouldn't all be doing it. And it's not naturally, it's not like they're just, talking, doing this. It's like they're literally standing there doing the symbol. So
It's like this, isn't it? It's like that.
yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, down like that, yeah. And
Yep.
to the outro, you know what I love? I love it when I forget the name of the host, the American host. What's his name? I can't remember. He just left me.
Larry King.
Larry King.
oh,
He says, "Oh, your mother was quite the editor," and it's JFK Jr.'s smile. He says, "Yeah, I think so." It's that smile of love and
Mhm.
respect for his mother. And every time I see that, I get this little bit of emotion inside me. I hope my son smiles and says that
Me too.
someday about me. It's and I think
Yeah.
that's a very as a mother when Larry King said that to him, his face just softens and smiles and like, yeah, she was. She was quite the editor.
Yes. And reading all the books that I've read and, listening to the interviews that I've listened to, he had a very sincere love and adoration for his mom. And, she was a little bit of a stickler. She was very much like, nope, you're going to do things this way and it's my way. And, I think I'm like that as a mom too. Maybe my
My
son's going
son
to
says
be
I'm like that too.
that. You know what? It's because we care. Okay.
Yeah.
it's
But
very friendly.
just reading about that and hearing about that, it was it's so endearing, that
Mm.
relationship that they shared. So, I'm glad I can highlight those things so people remember. And every single outro, it just reaffirms we're taking a cue from you and folks like yourself. He's taking the cue away from them and he's using it for good. He's reversing their cue. So it's right there. They tell you in plain English, but it's up to you to interpret it how he intended it. So, and it's not always easy. It's really hard sometimes, but it's fun.
Yeah. And Rachel, you also interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yes, that was. I actually got to interview him right before he left the Democrat Party. So I think I interviewed him like on a Saturday, and then Sunday or Monday evening, he came out and said he's going to run as an independent. So that was pretty. And his communications director said, "We've canceled all interviews, but we're keeping yours." And I was like, "Wow, I really appreciate that." So I drove to Detroit and stayed there, and I interviewed him. I got to ask him all kinds of questions. I did ask him about John, and I said, "Do you think John would run for president?" And there's just the answers he gave. And then at the very end of the interview, I was like, "Thank you so much. We wish you the best of luck." And he's like, "Well, I wish you the best of luck. I know John would really like this." And it was just really sweet.
Oh,
It was such a sweet comment for him to say. And I really enjoyed getting to meet him. He was so kind. He just sat and talked. He's like, where's your family from? Where are you descendant from? Oh, do you have kids? And I said, I do. And they're learning about the Kennedys right now in history class because my kids were talking about that. And so he took my phone and he memorized all their names. And he said, "Hi, this is Bobby Kennedy. I'm really sorry you couldn't be here today, but I really hope I can get to meet you sometime. Anyway, I've heard that some of you are learning about me in your history class, learning about my family, and for
Mm.
that, I'm very grateful." And then he said, "Anyway, the moment you're old enough to vote, you know who to vote for." And I just started laughing because he's obviously talking about himself, like vote for me. And it was just, he was such a nice guy. And then when I went to the most recent rally in New York City, he was coming out. I had the best seat, I
yeah.
swear, because I could see everybody coming out. And then when they came back in, you couldn't miss me. I'm in a bright yellow shirt and I'm waving my little tush off, trying to get people's attention. And the girl next to me was like, "Bobby," and he looked up and they looked at me and he looked at us and he was like just waving like he recognized us all. And I mean, I know he recognized me because I sat there with him for over an hour and talked with him. So it was just he's a nice guy, and I think he's going to be a really good addition to the Trump team in the health department because we need a lot of help here with food. I mean, literally everything. Everything is poison here. So he'll be great. I think he's gonna be awesome.
And he's also a great advocate for the fisheries and the fishermen in America too. And we're having we're having really bad troubles with our fishing. And Robert Kennedy is also a great advocate for the fishermen who are also having quota issues and everything. I think in Maine. So he's also and farming and food, good
Yes.
clean food, and for the farmers. Um, so I think so
Yeah.
too. And also autism and anyone with disabilities as well.
Yes, all of that stuff matters. And I'm in Iowa, so we have corn, corn syrup, and all of the modified stuff, all the stuff they spray, the pesticides, uh, it all needs to change. So it's just weird how I'm right in the heart of all of that, like the pesticide and the stuff they spray. And then now they've started, like my father doesn't farm. We have a little creek that runs behind our house. He doesn't farm it because it's known as like a buffer zone. So all of the chemicals that go in the water, or that would go in the water, now stay in the ground and don't run into the water system, so that it's supposed to help with the drinking water. I don't know how much it helps, but and the government actually gives you incentives not to farm if you have a creek, so that your farm pesticides, whatever, don't go into the water. So I think, that's a good step in the right direction. So, but a lot of work still needs to be done. And I think Bobby is a great person for that.
Well, maybe one day maybe one day next year he'll come over here to Ireland, and maybe President Donald J. Trump might come along. The two of them might come to Ireland, and maybe you'll pop along with them as well.
I would love to. I would love to come meet you guys in person, and so many other countless viewers from across the world.
Yeah.
I feel like I have friends everywhere, and it's just bizarre because I'm just a little farm girl from Iowa. And I'm talking to people in Ireland and the UK and Spain and all over the place. And it's just, we really truly are all in this together, all across the world. We're all we're just humanity. So we're all on the same team.
Because we're very conscious, you have to go and collect your children from school. It's nighttime here, but it's still in the middle of the day in Iowa. Paul, have you any questions? Paul, what we were really going through your channel, and we're going, oh God, this is good, this is brilliant, and Paul was just like, oh my God. Paul, what were your favorite videos that you watched?
Definitely the 250 ways to make America better again. I thought that was really, really interesting, and a lot of some great ideas there. Also did one. It was very interesting. It was on the 20 top women in politics. Now, it was a very, very diverse list, which kind of shows how diverse the George was. You had people from different political parties, left, right, even had celebrities as well, which was interesting because if you were doing a list now, I don't know what it would be like. And definitely, I think there's one on it's about our role models. Should we question our role models? So which is very true because, as they say, you should never put anyone on the pedestal.
Right. I think we're seeing how that played out when we do that, when we
Yeah,
put Hollywood
yeah,
stars. And I think there was this underlying theme that politicians are actors.
yeah.
Like that theme comes throughout. And um, this this issue right here talks about Elvis's strange dream. And Elvis met with Nixon, and he said, Nixon's like, wow, your outfit's kind of crazy. And he said, you've got your show to run and I've got mine. And I thought that was very interesting because he obviously knew that Nixon, politicians have a show, and we're seeing how that show works. And I think the show has been going on for a long time, but now it's a different kind of show. It's showing us what it was. So there's kind of two different shows going on here. But there was another one called Lights, Camera, Politics. That was one of them. And then in that editor's letter at the bottom, it says, enjoy the show.
Yes,
So that's pretty
at the very
interesting.
bottom. Yeah.
At the very bottom, yeah. I have a shirt actually that says that. I just clipped that thing where it says enjoy the show, and then it has a signature. So that's one of the shirts on my website. But those kind of things that you guys would understand, but if you wore it out in public, people would be like, why are you wearing a shirt that says enjoy the show? Well, maybe you should do some research and find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, we really, really do appreciate you coming on, because it's nice to actually, because we're Ireland and you've got Robert Kennedy running now in politics. He's now going to be in the Trump administration. You got President Trump's election now coming up in a couple of days' time. And there's a real good connection between Ireland and America. And President Trump has a hotel here in Doonbeg called Trump Doonbeg. And, it's really nice to actually start sort of linking up the Irish Political Roundup with what's happening in America, because what happens in America happens in Ireland. And, some of us think, well, is it the 50, we're another state added on to America. But you were at the MAGA rally in Madison Square, you talked earlier, and it looked like a real celebration.
It really was. And, it's really sad to read the media's depiction of it afterwards, because it was nothing like that. There was no Nazi rally. There was one bad joke, which I even went on and said, I didn't really like that joke. Even when he said it, I was like, that's really not very funny. It wasn't even the content. The joke itself to me wasn't even funny. So, and then they're going to use that to attack us with too. But aside from those things, it was literally a celebration of Americans of all different races, all different cultures, all different religions, everything. And everybody was there. We all want unity for the country and for the world. And there's nothing like a Trump rally. There really isn't. You can't describe it to people. The energy is just off the charts. When he walks out, when he does his little Trump dance, all of that, I posted a TikTok, I think it was yesterday, of his dance.
Yeah.
And it has over 1.7 million views. And it has like
Wow.
220,000, I think, likes on it. So people love him. They love him. They love his personality. They love his dancing. It's just the people, and I can see when people comment negative stuff and they say certain things, you know exactly where they got it from. They're listening to the mainstream media, they're regurgitating what they heard on there, and then they're using that to attack you. And it's almost like I don't even get angry anymore when I see these things, because I just feel sorry for them that they're missing out on all of the things playing out. Aren't you guys so thankful that you're awake for this, that you can actually see what's happening, that you're not asleep? Because we're getting to see history being made in real time. And there's so many people that are missing it. I just feel sorry for them. I really do.
And when you think about it, people say, you either love him or you don't like him. But whenever he is speaking or anything goes on television, everybody's tuned in and listening to what he has to say. And we've a politician a bit like this here in Ireland as well, who people either like him or hate him or dislike him. But whenever he comes into the media, they listen, they stop and listen to what he has to say. But I just think, again, it's hegemony in the media. Who controls the media controls the message, and who's paying who's paying the media bills is that's the narrative and the message they're going to say about any politician or any political issue or any celebrity as well. But I'm glad, for one, as a mother, and I used to say it in the radio programs, especially with the Me Too Me movement and the Harvey Weinstein, I used to say it's all coming from Hollywood. And the fake feminism movement. And I had a women's program on radio, and I go, I can't stand the fake feminism. And I think that's all going to go now, as you said in about women in politics and influencers and women leadership is going to change now going forward, because we don't want marketed, we don't want selected people to be marketed and managed as leaders to deliver other people's messages. We want real leaders who live to their core values and are aligned to their core values, to the behaviors, to the spoken words, to the behaviors and actions and the outcomes. That's what we want now.
Yes, and I think that's why Trump appeals to so many, is because he's not this polished politician. He is who he is. He's authentic. He's genuine. And whether you like him or hate him, that's who he is. And he's okay with that. He's very secure in who he is. And I think a lot of times people don't realize if you knew what he knew about what these people have done, you wouldn't act so nice to them either. You wouldn't be a polished politician to them either. It'd be really hard to hold back when you know that people were engaged in some of the practices that they were engaged in. So I love the authentic. I mean, you two are so authentic. You're so genuine, and it's just so refreshing to meet people like that, because there are a lot of fakes out there. There is a lot of riffraff happening, and it's just so off-putting. Nobody wants that anymore. We don't want Hollywood stars telling us who to vote for, who are so rich, they're so out of touch with real life, with what we go through. We go to work, we have kids to raise, we have dinner to make, we have laundry to do, dishes, all of that stuff. I do all of that stuff every day. I live a real life. These people don't. They have maids, they don't get it. So I think we're through with all of that fake stuff, and we just want people who are real humans, people who know what it's like to live in the real world.
They can think for themselves.
Yeah, critical
Right.
thinking. It's like you go to university, the lecturers tell you to think critical. As long as you write your exam papers in their thoughts, in their brief, to their academic thinking, and then you get the high grade marks. And if you have a different, you use your critical thinking and write something from from my say from a media academic or media researcher who they disagree with, it's low marks, you know. So use critical thinking, you know, as long as it's to their thinking. It's time to
Yeah.
actually, we all have use our own thoughts and spoken words. And, you know, we can do it respectfully. I grew up in the north of Ireland in Derry during the Troubles. And, you know, I used to watch the media and how the media used to portray the North during the Troubles, and it was nothing like what it really was. They really overhyped it and made out that, you know, Catholics and Protestants didn't like one another. You know, my best friends are mostly Protestant, you know, but so it's just I never believed what I saw in the media. And also up north, we always you had the Catholic media and you had the Protestant media, and we all read, the Catholics read the Protestant media and the Protestants read the Catholic media to see what the others were saying, just what you were saying earlier. And
Right.
and that's what we try to do here in the Irish Political Roundup, give people different perspectives, different opinions, so other people can make up their own minds.
Yeah.
Amen. That's what it's about.
Well,
When you
Rachel,
do that, you make politics more accessible. Sorry for cutting across your Roisin. Want to make that point.
yeah, make politics more accessible and make
Yeah,
whole society.
and make it okay to have discussions again.
Yeah.
It's so it gives me anxiety. I can see if you have a conversation with somebody and you start saying something that they don't agree with, their shoulders start going up and they start posturing, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna back down. I'm not here to, we're just having a conversation. And I just listened kindly while you told me your viewpoint, and now I'm sharing mine, and they don't want to hear it. So we need to make that normal again. That you can have a conversation about politics. They say no talk about religion or politics. Well, maybe we do need more talk about those things. We need to talk about God. We need more God, and we need more discussions about politics so we can refine our understanding of our reality. If we never question it, then we're all just going to be sheep the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So,
Paul, before Rachel goes, have you any more questions or anything you would like to say to Rachel? I feel really bad, Paul. I've done all the talking.
No, you're grand. No, just Rachel, thanks a million for coming on the Irish Political Roundup. It's been brilliant to talk to you. We've been watching your videos over the last while, and they are fantastic. So I would highly recommend people to check out Rachel, Right Side Blonde, your YouTube channel, and or across all your other social medias. They're really, really good. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
thanks a million for coming on, and I really recommend people to check out your content.
Yes.
And what we'll do is we'll put links to your YouTube channel and to your social media all in the description below. And if we can find it, we'll also put in the link to your interview with Robert Kennedy as well.
Sounds great. That'd be awesome. I appreciate you guys. It was so lovely meeting you, and we're all in this together, and it's great to know I've got a few allies over in Ireland.
Oh, I say you've got quite a few.
Absolutely.
Rachel from Right Side Blonde, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Paul and myself here on the Irish Political Roundup. It's been an absolute pleasure indeed, and to have our first American guest on as well.
My pleasure, and I'm just great to meet you guys, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Great to have you on again.
Yes, and maybe you'll come over and visit Ireland.
I would love to, and if I do, I'll be sure to let you guys know.
Definitely.